Hello and welcome to Stories That Shape Us. My name is Joanna Daniel. Thank you for joining me in Stories That Shape Us. Thank you for all the messages and comments. I always have to mention the messages because it tells me that you are listening, that you're watching, and I really appreciate you. I really appreciate the feedback that I get. I really appreciate the fact that you're listening with your journal and that it can be a tool of reflection for you. Today I'm talking about something that's really important, and all of my subjects are important. I always say today I'm talking about something that's important, but I want to talk to the person who reason away abuse using scriptures. And talk to you if this has ever happened to you, if somebody has ever used scriptures to invalidate your pain, to justify the abuse, to tell you that you're not supposed to feel the way you feel, to gaslight you, basically. If anybody has ever done that, I want you to know that that is wrong and that is not okay. And it's okay that you felt some kind of way about it, because sometimes we feel some kind of way about something and we don't quite know why we feel the way we do. We know that what's happening is wrong, but oftentimes people who do this are people in spiritual authority, and we feel like we don't have foundation grounding education enough to challenge it. And then we live in this world where there's this dissonance where what is said and what we experience is so completely different, but we don't feel like we have the authority, we have the know-how to challenge it. And so sometimes you might try to suppress it, to press it down, but it doesn't stay down. And I always say to people, that's not sustainable, because when we do that, then the thing that we're trying to suppress stays there, bear fruits, and it becomes something. So it's really important to know and to understand. And I just want to let you know that if this has happened to you, if somebody has used scripture to explain away your pain, to tell you that you shouldn't feel the way you do, and to invalidate you, that's wrong. I know sometimes when there's allegation of sexual abuse, especially when it's coming from leadership, there are people who are in leadership who sometimes will use scriptures to tell you that you can't call out the sin, to tell you that it's wrong for you to require a certain thing from leaders that uses their position to harm and abuse people. When it's domestic abuse and you turn up a church and you disclose, sometimes scriptures are used to gaslight you into being quiet, to stay silent, to not share your story and to not get help. I want you to know that this is wrong. And I'm not a theologian, and I often say that, but I know the Bible enough and God enough to know when something is wrong. And I know there are many people that is thinking about their faith in different ways. You're thinking about it in different ways, and sometimes you might feel like that's wrong to do, but it's okay to do, to think about it in different ways, to stop to turn off the narrative from certain people, and to so that you can hear God clearly for yourself, so that you can understand for yourself, and you can navigate what that relationship with him looks like for yourself without somebody else directing it. So you can't reason away scriptures using doctrines or quotes to explain away pain or the reality of what somebody discloses. When you do that, you fall into the category of people who uses the Bible. And people use the Bible as Black people. We know this, to further slavery, to further patriarchy, and to oppress. We know that. And it really is a challenge sometimes when we're trying to understand religion and to understand Christianity and what we sign up for ourselves, without hearing it through the voice of the oppressor. And that's why when you use Bible to explain away people's pain, that's why you fall into those categories. And so it's really important that you deal with your discomfort when there's a disclosure, so that this is not, so you don't use that. So often people that are unpacking abuse have to also unpack their beliefs and found their beliefs and the foundation of those beliefs. Because the words that were meant to heal and to empower and to give life is used to harm and to damage and to cause pain. And so when the word that is supposed to give you life is used to break you, then there's an issue, because you cannot see these words in the context of compassion and life giving, because they were used to take it from you, to break you. So it's a challenge. So as a preacher, as a pastor, as a leader, as a helper, you can't use the Bible in the same way as everybody else has used the Bible. And so it's important to realize and for you to develop the tool of self-reflection to understand when this is happening, when you're doing this. So it takes a lot of knowing of self and admitting our failings, our lack of understanding, and to have a humble, teachable spirit so that we can unlearn this. And I might be teaching to the choir right now. So the choir mean you might be people who understand this and knew this already. And I'm talking to you. But you might also be the person who you've been on the receiving end of the Bible being used in this way to break you. When scriptures were thrown at you as opposed to used as a holding space. But I want you to know it's wrong. You might not have known that it was, but I want you to know that something is very wrong with that. So leaders have used the Bible to manipulate women into staying in abusive relationships. They've used the Bible to manipulate people who disclose sexual abuse to stay quiet. They've used the Bible's mothers and parents have used the Bible to manipulate and control children. And what's often ironic is that the people who are using the Bible in these ways to manipulate and control, they are not living by every written word. And so it's so clear that sometimes we can see the disparity in the life that is being lived and what is being said. But because they're in leadership and we're taught to respect, to value, to obey those that are in leadership, and sometimes we do it to our own detriment. We don't question them. We don't wonder. We don't choose to ignore some of the things that they say, knowing that it's not coming from an educated place. And again, when I say educated, I don't mean in terms of a degree. I mean in terms of understanding of what you're saying. And the preachers and the pastors that I know that and sometimes I have conversations with and communicate with are people of humility. They're humble. They understand their limitations. Those are the ones that make referrals. Those are the ones that ask questions, the ones that attend workshops and trainings, the ones that read. So they're constantly developing a level of awareness and self-aware and understanding of self and wanting to understand the whole subject around abuse so that they're not arrogantly thinking that because they study theology that they know and understand how to deal with every human problem that is presented to them in their congregation. They're humble enough to know that this is not my area, and I need to find people who are specialists in these areas to teach about it, to refer people to do healing work, to do the work that is needed to do. So I know many that allow themselves to do this work, and there are many who won't allow themselves to do this work. And so I believe once again, and I did this a couple days ago around the trauma-informed church, that every church needs to include this in their leadership training, so that people who are coming out in doing leadership in churches can know that we must never be caught using the word of God in this way as a tool that breaks, as a tool that oppresses, as a tool that keeps somebody in a place of harm. We must use it to provide a door, an opening to give life, because that's what it's life giving. In John 1 verse 1 says, in him was life, and the light in him was light, and the light was the life of men, or in him was life, and the light was the light of men. But the idea was that in Jesus was life. He is light. He's the light of the world. So we can't use his words to break people. And we have to know when we're doing that and do something different. If we don't know how to do something different in order to change, to understand ourselves and to get the education that we need so that we can be a space that is not oppressive, but we can be a space that is healing and nourishing and nurturing to people, the people who we serve. Thank you for joining me in this episode of Stories That Shape Us. I hope you'll join me on the next story.